A threat actor calling themselves XP95 has listed over 3.8 of terabytes of Gauteng provincial government data up for sale on the dark web. Now we're talking over 3.6 million individual files. We are talking from your ID, your health records, your housing applications, your education data, and even your text metadata. Now the asking price for this is $25,000. Now that's roughly 460,000 rand. It's almost R500,000. Okay, let's rough back a bit. Who is XP95? Okay, so XP95, this group only emerged now in 2026 before Gauteng. Now, they were linked to a ransomware attack on medical facilities back in Spain. This appears to be the pivot in targeting high-value government database in emerging markets, and South Africa just became one of the biggest playgrounds. So this bridge was actually discovered on March 13, 2026, and the data dump date is listed as March 2026, meaning this is still fresh and a very active bridge. Now the data is currently being advertised on the dark web forums right now as I'm speaking to you. Now, how did they get in? Now, remember late in 2025 when government was facing a crisis with over 344 million in unpaid Microsoft licensing fees? Yeah. So apparently analysts believe that could have left very critical vulnerabilities on unpatched and also running skeletons for XP95 to actually exploit. So if you have or ever used any government website or e-government recruitment or any health services or housing portals from the government side, please change your password right now. Enable two-factor authentication, and remember to treat any call and even SMSs claiming to be from government and asking for your personal details as a scam. Because these criminals nowadays are getting smarter. Remember, be safe and stay safe.
Where that makes a victim's data, system or device accessible, it locks the target or encrypts it until the victim pays a certain amount of money to the attacker. We find out now why ransomware is a problem, and we're going to be talking now with Dr Thembekile Mayayise, a senior lecturer with a PhD in Infomation Systems. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on Tech Africa.
Good morning, Puleng, and thanks so much for having me this morning.
So, Doctor, to start off with, what exactly is ransomware, and how does this type of cyber attack work?
Okay, ransomware is basically another form of cyber attack. So the way it works is that obviously it can be launched in various forms. An attacker, for instance, can send a phishing email to an employee of an organization, and if they click on that link, you find that it actually spreads and it encrypts specific files or all systems, and a note is likely to appear on the screen of some employees or one employee, depending on the scale of the attack, with a note with instructions that in order for that particular employee or for the organization to have access to their data in the systems, they need to pay X amount of ransom into a specific account. Mm-hmm. So it's a very dangerous form of cyber attack because of the impact that it has on various organizations. You can just imagine having a lot of customer information or a lot of customer data in your systems, and you actually find that you are a victim of such an attack, what that would mean to your organizational operations.
And why has ransomware become one of the most common threats around the world?
It's One of many reasons, the fact that it's ransom, there's money involved, right? A lot of people are looking for money in different ways, legal and illegal, so it's crime that, hackers actually commit by launching these types of attacks. It's also starting to be very, very popular because, it's taking place in a virtual world, right? So these attackers are hiding somewhere in different parts of the world, and they can just target specific organizations, knowing very well that it will be very difficult for them to be traced. So once they succeed in getting a particular organization to bend, to comply to their requests or demands, then they are likely to get that particular institution, to pay a exchange of that information. Another thing, we're living in the era of artificial intelligence, right? With AI, there are goods and bads that come with, obviously, having artificial intelligence in our companies, in the society as a whole. But what AI has also enabled, malicious workers to do is to avail certain tools with so much ease. So even if you're not really an expert hacker, if there's such a term we could use today, we're likely to see a lot of amateurs, who play around with quite a number of AI tools to come up with means that they can be able to commit different types of cyber attacks. So that's also one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of these kinds of attacks, happening lately. We also have online stores where they specialize in the sale of malicious tools, where you can have ransomware, for instance, as a service. And, there are just many avenues that can be explored that can lead one into, getting their hands in these kinds of tools to be able to launch these kinds of attacks. And this is not to say it's the end of the road. I believe, in as much as I've spoken about AI and the dangers that come with some of, malicious uses of the technology, there are also opportunities that can be explored that can use the very same tool in developing means that will make technology more resilient, and have systems more secure in various institutions.
And in your article, you speak about it being more widespread and damaging, and you look at countries such as South Africa, which is sitting, and this was reported by Interpol in 2024, which also mentioned that South Africa was sitting at 12.2.1, with Egypt reported to be at 17.849 in terms of ransomware attacks. Are these just sporadic, or it's seasonal with specific countries?
It's not seasonal. I think now it's actually increasing. And you mentioned South Africa, you mentioned Egypt, and a whole lot more countries that may not actually even go to the media to report these kinds of attacks, right? So it's not something that I would say, it happens as and when. It happens all the time. Because unfortunately, Africa has previously been dubbed like a technology desert, in a sense that we actually don't have a lot of people who are skilled in cybersecurity. And because of that, we have gaps in various organizations. You find that certain organizations, they don't have designated or dedicated cybersecurity resources. They don't have people who are looking after cybersecurity. So that is a gap, because you actually don't have people who are constantly scanning your environment, making sure that they have the latest antivirus software that are actually deployed. You have intrusion detection systems that you have in place that can send you alert if, for instance, there is something suspicious that they pick up in your network. So Africa has got challenges of its own that I believe are quite unique from a skills perspective, and also from the fact that, we also have a lot of countries that are faced with a number of pressing issues whereby, hunger is of priority. So for, a country to maybe have a lot of budget that is assigned to, cybersecurity type of issues, you find that it's something that is not prioritized. So Africa, unfortunately, is sitting in a place of serious vulnerabilities when it comes to ransomware because of the numerous gaps that we actually have in various organizations because of the reasons I've just explained.
Earlier on, we looked at, or we played a clip for our listeners about the Gauteng provincial government that is currently under attack. And, brings me to the next question about how then do organizations fall prey to this. I would like us to get into that just shortly after this, Doctor. We're going to take a break now.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tech Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right, we're talking now to my guest, and we are discussing ransomware. What is it, and how do victims fall prey to ransomware? It's Dr. Thembekile Mayayise, senior lecturer with a PhD in Information Systems. Doctor, still with us?
Yes.
Okay, so what I wanted to know before we went to the break was how do then organizations fall victim to ransomware? Is it because maybe an employee got a link that they saw just randomly, then clicked on it? Or this can just happen even with no one taking action?
Okay. Thanks for that question. And I think the one thing that you've mentioned is the issue of links, which maybe I should start with, because we have a lot of emails lately because of, the use of various tools that are in the market today. I've explained the issue of, having, AI generated tools. And we have an increase in phishing emails that are targeting various organizations, from time to time. So ransomware can be launched through, a link where you get a phishing email with a message and a link. And if you don't actually apply your mind, you quickly click on the link, you may find that it's actually a link with a malicious software attached to it. The other avenue could be where you now go into a website and you download malicious software. And that can be something that, people do accidentally. So in an organization, not knowing that you're actually exposing, your entire organization, to that type of attack. Another method is in the form of, weak access control measures, meaning where employees don't have stronger access control measures in the form of user accounts, strong passwords, and various authentication means to be able to get access into their systems. So in such a case, you're likely to find that, ransomware can be launched by an attacker who can easily crack the passwords and have access into your network. And from there, they can do as they please. They can actually launch this attack from any part of your network, and you find yourself sitting with a serious problem where all your data is encrypted and you cannot have or use anything that is actually in your systems. So there are just different ways, and some are ways that you may actually say, yes, it's human error, where people will just randomly click on these links without being aware of what it is that they're exposing their organization into. Hence, issues around making employees aware about cybersecurity risks, taking them, through various forms of training or awareness campaigns, get them to understand the cybersecurity landscape, especially in this day and age where we find ourselves, living in, where technology keeps on evolving and a lot of attacks as well, they keep on coming up. So it's one way in which organizations can actually safeguard their information assets through awareness.
And Doctor, so let's say then there's that threat, and then you know how much you need to pay, how and why. Are you even guaranteed to get your data back, or some form of security after you pay? How, when these are actually faceless people? That what guarantee do you have?
You're actually very vulnerable, to be quite honest, when you are in that position where now you are at the mercy of the hackers, where the only option you have available is to just pay because you have no backup of your own that you can easily tap into. Now, in terms of the question that you have asked, there are no guarantees that after you've made the payment, you will get your data back. Even if you were to get your data back, there are no guarantees that the data has not actually been copied. It has not been replicated, and it's actually been put in other places that it can further be utilized for further forms of cyber attacks, right? So after making the payment and they give you back the data, that may be a relief that at least you managed to get something back. But what you will never know is who else has got a copy of that data. And if you're in business, you find that maybe some of your competitors, you didn't want them to know some of the secrets about your company that is actually kept in your systems. You find that somewhere, somehow, if it's dumped or a copy of your data is actually put on the dark web, you find that they end up getting to know about it and have access to that data. So it's a very, very tricky situation. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations find themselves having to pay that ransom with the risk of getting their data back or not getting it at all.
So what will be the first thing to do then?
To do when, okay.
If then the decision is not to pay the ransom, but I need to recover. The information has already been exposed. There's been a communication. What will be the most wisest thing to do at that time?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation to be at, like I've highlighted. So if, for instance, you don't have any backup, it will be very difficult, especially if you are fully reliant on information technology for your business on day-to-day basis, right? But if it's a matter of having to rebuild certain parts of your system, and maybe you have different copies of your data or systems in different forms, and you feel you can be able to rebuild, what has been lost, even if it's not 100%, but maybe you can get 80%, up and running, it's something doable. But what we have seen is that if a company, for instance, does not have the resources, because it's not so much sometimes about whether you should pay or not to pay. The question could also be, do I have what it's required to make the payment? So if a company, for instance, can't pay the ransom, they are just in that worse off situation as somebody who unfortunately doesn't want to risk paying the ransom and not getting anything. So you basically now in a very, very bad situation because there's nothing left for you, right? You'll have to determine whether it will be something that you can work manually with, say, for instance, it's an institution that is no longer having access to their information. Now you'll have to come up with processes or other measures that can get you to be operational while trying to get yourselves up and running. And the issue of money as well. If you don't have money, surely you won't be able to pay the ransom, even if you wanted to. So you'll be forced to have another manual process in place that will get you up and running. The most painful thing about this whole situation is that you will incur serious losses in that process. Having to now go into the manual mode of doing business, yet, before it would just be something that you do using a click of a button. It will just, cause serious loss for your organization. And we're talking operational losses, but we're also talking reputational damages. If you have clients who get to obviously know about the situation that you're facing, surely no one would want to trust you with business in future. They will see that, you actually, or their information with you is not safe, and may look for alternatives in order to avoid falling prey again with the weak practices that you would have demonstrated to have for your organization. So yeah, it may just be that you won't be functional. You may even close shop if you don't really have the money to pay for the ransom or the backups to be able to recover and get going with your business.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We have come to the top of the hour and we have to go to the news. Thank you for chatting to us on Tech Africa this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's 11 o'clock Central African time. That was Dr Thembekile Mayayise. And we're going now to Nosipho Zuma, who's going to give us the last bulletin of the day. It is now time to do that.
SABC News.